Marvel Studios has dropped their first official trailer for Marvel's What If. The multiverse is becoming increasingly important to the MCU's Phase 4. There are still lots of unanswered questions about the MCU's multiverse, not least being its origin, given Loki has introduced a secretive group called the TVA whose job is to prune branches before they can become well established. But it's now clear multiversal variants of the various heroes and villains could be widely different to the characters viewers are familiar with, so much so that Loki Episode 5 introduced a version of Loki who is actually an alligator. That means the story potential is almost limitless, and Marvel's upcoming What If series will mine that potential, introducing audiences to a range of timeliness where characters turned left instead of right, switched places, or even turned into zombies. Here's every alternate character and timeline that can be identified in the trailer. Number 10. Tony Stark is saved by Killmonger. Iron Man launched the MCU, and so apparently Marvel's What If trailer starts with a switch-up version of what should have been Iron Man's origin. Here, Industrialist never gets shrapnel embedded in his chest because he is rescued by Eric Killmonger. This is something of an unholy alliance because Killmonger would be utterly dedicated to taking over Wakanda. And he has a powerful ally in an amoral industrialist who has never learned humility in the Afghan caves. A Funko Pop has confirmed Killmonger will become King of Wakanda. He is briefly shown leading an army in one shot. And there's what seems to be an uprising against his rule featuring members of the Wakandan royal family and Pepper Potts, suggesting Stark's long-suffering secretary betrays the alliance between her boss and Killmonger. Number 9. An evil Doctor Strange. There have been reports Marvel What If will introduce an evil version of Doctor Strange, one who turns to magic after the death of his true love and becomes a terrifyingly powerful sorcerer. The trailer includes shots of Strange walking into a chamber where he is surrounded by mystical ruins reminiscent of the ones seen in WandaVision. He then plunks down, possibly transported into the multiverse in a clear riff on the magical mystery tour seen in Doctor Strange, perhaps hinting this variant learns magic from a very different mentor. A later shot shows Doctor Strange in pitched battle against the Ancient Wand, confirming his turn for the Oaths. Number 8. T'Challa becomes Star-Lord. In another timeline, Peter Quill is not the one kidnapped as a boy by Yondu. T'Challa of Wakanda is. He still becomes Star-Lord and in one shot even claims the orb containing the Power Stone on Morag. But his relationship with the Ravagers is very different to Quill's. Rather than a semi-outcast, T'Challa fits right in, and in one superb scene he shows why he is become one of their trusted strategists. A Ravager never flies solo, he declares, although amusingly the Ravagers miss the command and don't initially step in as ordered. Number 7. Black Widow infiltrates the Hulk project. Merchandise has shown a version of Natasha Romanoff in the Red Room's customary Black Widow gear, hinting at a timeline in which she never left the program. If that is indeed the case, then some shots in the trailer suggest this variant of Black Widow will infiltrate General Ross's super soldier projects and interfere with the creation of the Hulk in some way. She is seen facing off against the Z Giant while dressed in US military gear. It looks as though we are going to see an alternate version of the Hulk's origin story, one in which the Red Room got involved. Number 6. Party Thor vs. Ultron. Merchandise has already introduced viewers to Party Thor, presumably a version of the God of Thunder who never learns to take life seriously in the slightest. The Marvel's What If trailer suggests this Thor variant's luxurious ways will ultimately be interrupted when he is forced to travel to Midgard and join the battle against an army of Ultron's drones. It's possible some other shots showing Loki as leader of Asgard's armies in an alternate version of the scene in Thor where the Asgardians met S.H.I.E.L.D. are also from this timeline. If that is the case, Loki seems to then turn the cascade of frozen winters on S.H.I.E.L.D., meaning this time Agent Coulson does not win friends and allies in Asgard. Number 5. Captain Carter and Howard Stark. One of the most exciting prospects in Marvel's What If is the opportunity to see a twisted timeline in which Peggy Carter becomes the world's first super soldier instead of Steve Rogers, likely taking up the identity of Captain Britain. The trailer offers some tantalizing shots of Captain Carter in action and seemingly confirms long-standing rumors Howard Stark will become her sidekick, donning his own version of the Iron Man armor. Curiously, Peggy Carter is shown both in battle against Nazis and extra-dimensional entities, and there's even a brief shot of her being introduced to Doctor Strange. Number 4. Marvel Zombies. Another of the more heavily teased What If stories sees the Winter Soldier go up against a zombie Captain America. But he won't be the only Marvel superhero transformed into a zombie. The concept of Marvel Zombies originates from the comics themselves, with The Walking Dead's Robert Kirkman and Sean Phillips introducing readers to a world where their favorite superheroes had become zombies back in 2005. It's been revisited countless times in the comics, and the Marvel Zombies brand is known for being pretty bleak. It works best in tales where characters from other dimensions accidentally crash into this horror-inspired world, or where the voracious appetites of the zombies leads to them invading other realities. Number 3. Vision tears out the Mind Stone. There are a couple of shots featuring the Vision, and at one point he is the one who appears to be telling people about the multiverse, suggesting he has somehow become aware of it. Vision's role is something of a mystery, but it seems this variant will eventually choose to tear the Mind Stone from his own head for unknown reasons. Early voiceovers featured nods towards the Infinity Stones, so there may be an Infinity Stone plot at some point. Number 2. The Guardians of the Multiverse. Leaked merchandise for Marvel's What If featured the Guardians of the Multiverse, suggesting the variants would come together as an actual alliance. The trailer confirms this, with one shot in which Doctor Strange introduces himself to Captain Carter, and another in which Black Widow tosses Captain Carter's shield. There's a third in which the Guardians assemble for a group shot that's deliberately compared to the first Avengers movie. Only part of the team are visible, but you can clearly see Killmonger's Black Panther, a version of Gamora who wields Thanos' trademark blade from Avengers Endgame, T'Challa's Star-Lord, and Party Thor. The merchandise suggested other team members will include Captain Carter, Doctor Strange, and a version of Black Widow. Number 1. A possible glimpse of Scarlet Witch. Supporting this theory, one shot in the Marvel's What If trailer shows what seems to be Scarlet Witch unleashing a flare of energy, with Okoye throwing a spear at her, and the spear disintegrating as it approaches her. WandaVision left Scarlet Witch studying the forbidden magic of the Darkhold, and according to Elizabeth Olsen, her character will pick up a number of new abilities from this mystical tome, and Scarlet Witch can now travel between universes. In the comics, Wanda Maximoff can manipulate the fabric of reality itself, and her expanding power set is generally expected to be the cause of Doctor Strange 2's Multiverse of Madness. If there are indeed glimpses of Wanda jumping between the dimensions, then Marvel's What If may well have a direct narrative connection to the upcoming films.